Hi, I'm Assistant Professor Aditi Mathur, International Schools of Business Management, Suresh Gyan University, Jaipur. And in today's video lecture, we'll be learning and understanding the different scales that means economies and diseconomies of scales. The economies and diseconomies of scales are in long run period only. So let us just start understanding the concept by first understanding that what do we mean by economies of scale. So economies of scale are the cost advantages that a business can exploit by expanding the scale of production. So you will have generally heard that many people says that the number of units will increase, your scale of production will increase, and then your total cost will reduce. And this situation which arise because of the expansion of your scale of production and the reduction of the cost gives you the cost advantage, and that becomes a part of your economies of scale. So what is economies of scale? Economies of scale are the cost advantages that a business can exploit by expanding the scale of production. The effect is to reduce the long run average cost of production. So when you do that, the long run average cost of production keep on decreasing as and as you increase your scale of production. These lowest costs are the improvement in the productive efficiency and can benefit customers in the form of lower prices. So now what we know is that the economies of scale is that cost advantage which any producer have because they have expanded the scale of production. And as the scale of production have expanded, increased, the average cost in the long run reduced. And that advantage is known as your economies of scale. Let us just understand this economies of scale concept with the help of a numerical question. So we will be calculating the average fixed cost, average variable cost, then total fixed cost and total variable cost. But for that, let us just see the different level of output or quantities and the total cost given to us. So at output 0, we have 200 rupees as our total cost. At 50, we have 300. At 150 units, we have 400. At 150, we have 450. At 200, we have 460, and at 250 units of output, we have total cost of 465. So for that, I'll request you all to just have a piece of paper, pen, pencil, and scale and draw a schedule. So in the first column, you are going to write down all the output levels which are given to us. That is 0, 50, 100, 150, 200, and 250. And in the second column, write TC, that is your total cost. That is 200, 300, 400, 450, 460, and 465. And the third column, just label them up as your total fixed cost. Fourth column for your total variable cost. Fifth is for average cost, then average fixed cost, and average variable cost. So I'm going to teach you how to calculate this all. So the things which are given to us in the question right now is your outputs and total cost. And now we have to calculate the remaining areas. So we know the first and the foremost very important formula that is the total cost is equals to fixed cost plus variable cost. And we know that at the level of output 0, we don't have any variable cost. That's why at the level of 0 output, our total cost is equals to our fixed cost. So in question also, your zeroth output level, you have total cost of 200. And this 200 is equals to your total fixed cost because you don't have any variable cost in your total cost at the level of 0. And that is why you have received your figure of total fixed cost. Take a minute and understand what I have just said you right now. I said that at zeroth level or at the zero output, you don't incur any variable cost. So the total cost is directly equal to your total fixed cost. And we know one more thing, that your total fixed cost remains same. Right? So for the each level, it is 200, 200, 200, 200, 200, and 200. So now it's very easy. So in the formula, we know the total cost, we know the fixed cost. So can we easily calculate our variable cost, which is equals to total cost minus fixed cost? So that is what we have done. For first level, that is for the zeroth output, it is 0. For the second level or the 50th output, our total cost is 300, fixed cost is 200, so we have 100. Then at 100 units, it is 200. At 150 units, we have 250. At 200 outputs, we have 260 as our total variable cost. At 250 units of output, we have total variable cost of 265 rupees. So I do hope that till this point we understood how to calculate variable cost and fixed cost if you are given the outputs and the total cost. So now let's just start calculating the average cost. So we also know the formula to calculate the average cost, that is total cost divided by n. So at the level of first, that is the zeroth output, it is 0. For the 50 outputs, your total cost is 300. So your average cost for 50 output will be 300 divided by 50, which will give you 6. And same way we are going to calculate for others. So it will be 400 divided by 100, which will give us 4. Here we are with the 4. Then it is 450 divided by 150, which will give us 3. Then we have 460 divided by 200, which is equal to 2.3. And at last, it is 465 divided by 250, which is equals to 1.86. Right? Isn't that so easy? To calculate the average cost if you know your total cost and the outputs. So now let us just learn and calculate your average fixed cost. So the formula is very easy and simple. As we know that we have to calculate average fixed cost. So what we are going to do, we are going to take fixed cost and we will divide it by n. Right? So what is the formula to calculate average fixed cost? It is fixed cost divided by n. So now let us just all take our calculators. I have also opened my calculator and let's start solving one by one. So your average fixed cost for level of 50 will be 200 divided by 50, which is equals to 4. Then we have it 100 divide it, no, sorry, my bad. Now we have, this is our fixed cost, 200 divided by 100, which is equals to 2. Then 200 divided by 150, it is 1.33. Then it is 200 divided by 200, which is equals to 1. And then we have 200 divided by 250, which is 0.8. Right? So we have now calculated average fixed cost. So now let's just calculate average variable cost. Same way, average variable cost will be equals to variable cost divided by n. So this is the column to be taken into the consideration. So at level 1, we will have nothing. And at level 2, we will have 100 divided by 50, which is equals to 2. Then we have 200 divided by 100, which is also 2. Then we have 250 divided by 150, which is 1.66. Then we have 260 divided by 200, it is 1.3. Then we have 265 divided by 250, which is 1.06. Right? And to cross verify whether you have accurately corrected the average variable cost and average fixed cost, just use a cheat code which I'm sharing with you, and that is that you are simply going to add your average fixed cost with your average variable cost and check it whether it is equals to your average total cost. So it is 0, 4 plus 2, 6, correct. 2 plus 2, 4, correct. 1.33 plus 1.66 will be approximately 3. Then 1 plus 1.3 is 2.3. Then 0.8 plus 1.06 is 1.86. Voila. So I have easily calculated my different types of average cost when I was given the output and total cost. Dear students, these types of questions many times come in the examination. So don't hesitate, have a good practice of these types of questions. There are n numbers of resources available to do these practices. You can take the help of the referred books or any of the web pages which are there, and you have the reliability on that content of the page. So now let us just understand what do we mean by the external economies and diseconomies. So we actually have two important things. That is, we have economies and we have diseconomies. So economies is what? Economies, we have just read few slides ahead, and that was what? That was a situation, a cost advantage position which a company have just because they have increased their scale of production. So we have economies and diseconomies. So economies is an advantageous position. So vice versa, diseconomies is a disadvantageous position. In economies, we enjoy the cost leadership, whereas in diseconomies, we have lots and lots of cost. So, in both economies and diseconomies, we have external and internal. And we are going to study both of them. So, let us just first understand the external economies of scale. So external economies of scale includes the benefits of positive externalities enjoyed by the firm as a result of the development of an industry or a whole country. So, as the term external is there, that means the economies which you are enjoying, the economies of scale, the minimum cost advantage which you are enjoying is because of the positive external factors. It may be because of the development in the industry, it may be that because of the development in the whole economy, right? And because of those factors, when you are having an advantageous position, it is known as external economies of scale. For example, as an industry develops in a particular region, an infrastructure of transport of communication will develop, which all the industry members can benefit from. Specialist suppliers may also enter the industries, and existing firms may benefit their proximity. So what happens is that, let's take an example, that there is an infrastructure development and there is now a better roads and the transportation, and we have a better communication channel. So just because of a better communication channels and the transportation, don't you think that this advantage of the development of infrastructure will be enjoyed by the entire industry? And when the advantage is there with the entire industry, it is your external economies. And that is how you enjoy the economies of scale, because of the external factors, and that factors affect the entire economy or the industry. So now let us just understand the external diseconomies. So we have right now understood external economies. Now let us just see what do we mean by external diseconomies. So the external diseconomies are the costs which are outside the control of single firm and result of the growth of specific industry. For example, negative externalities such as road collisions can result from the growth of the industry in specific region. Resources may become exhaustive and the prices of the resources may rise in the demand outstrip supplies. So there might be few factors which are impacting the entire industry, and because of which, if you are facing any increase in the cost or you are facing some kind of the losses, that becomes a part or a reason of your external diseconomies. And this economies is because of those factors which cannot be controlled by a single firm, right? So both external diseconomies and external economies are because of the other factors, the outside factors, which are not under the control of a single firm, but they impact the organization in their own ways. Economies give them the advantages, whereas diseconomies give them the disadvantages. So now let's discuss the internal economies of scales. So, as the term says, economies, that means the advantageous position of the scales which a firm is enjoying because of the internal factors. Because of those factors which are of the organization and which are under the control and influence of the particular individual firms. These economies of scales are not enjoyed by all the members of the market. They are only enjoyed by a specific group of people, and in this case is a particular company. So what all are can be the reasons or the part of the internal economies of scale? So we have technical economies of scale, marketing economies of scale, managerial economies of scale, we have financial economies of scale, then we have network economies of scale. So these are the reasons for which a firm can enjoy an advantageous position and no one else in the market will have it. So let us just understand them one by one. So the first one which we are going to understand in the internal economies of scale is your technical economies of scale. So the technical economies of scale is because of the technology. Large scale businesses can afford to invest in the expensive and the specialist capital machineries, the latest version technologies. For example, a supermarket chain such as Tesco. So the chain of the supermarkets of the Tesco are enjoying their advantage because of the technology they have. And this advantage is not with the every other chain of the supermarket or any supermarket in this world. The technology which they are having is top notch, and because of which they are always in the advantageous position. The specialization of the workforce is the another very important point. The larger organizations or the businesses split complex production processes into the separate tasks to boost productivity. The division of labor in the mass production of the motor vehicles and in the manufacturing electronic products is an example of the technological economies of scale. So now let's just discuss the marketing economies of scale. As the name suggests, the economies of scales which are enjoyed because of the marketing strategies. A large firms can spread its advertising and the manufacturing or marketing budgets over a large number of outputs, and it can purchase in inputs in bulk and negotiated discounted prices. If it has a monopoly's buying power in the market, the big food retailers have more power when purchasing suppliers from the farms. So the marketing economies of scales are the one of the very important economies of the scale. Every firm cannot enjoy it. Only the large firms have that capability to take the advantage of spreading the advertisement and the marketing cost budgets which they have, the big budgets which they have over all the large level of the outputs they are going to produce. The another internal economies of scale is the managerial economies of scale. This is a form of the division of labor. Large-scale manufacturers employ specialists to supervise production system and oversees human resources. So this type of the advantage, which is because of the human power, because of the special knowledge, because of the diverse and the division of the labors the company have, that advantage helps you out to take the economies of scale. So it is because of the managerial economies of scale. So now let's just discuss the financial economies of scale. Large firms are usually rated by the financial markets to be the more credit worthy, as have access to the credit facilities with favorable rate of borrowing. In contrast, small firms often face high rates of interest on the overdrafts and loans, and because of which the large firms enjoy the financial economies of scales, and whereas the new firms or the new entrant in the market, the small firms have this disadvantage with them because they don't get the loan that easily and they always get it at the higher rates in comparison to the large firms which they are getting, because those large firms have earned that credit, have earned that goodwill, and because of which they becomes credit worthy. Then we have the network economies of scale. Some networks and services have huge potential for economies of scale. That is, as they are more widely used, they become more valuable to the business that provides them. E-commerce is a great example of network economies of scale. So those companies or organizations who are part of like e-commerce, they enjoy the network economies of scale because their in sales increases because of the e-commerce networking. Otherwise, let's just imagine an organization which is in Delhi and does not have that platform of e-commerce, and they are will be only limited to the people living in Delhi or living to that layout nearby localities. But if that organization or if that shop is registered on the e-commerce platforms like your Amazon, your Flipkart, your Mintra, etc., then there are a number of chances that the sales will be better and it will be all across the world or all across the nation. So that is why the network economies of scales is also one of the advantage or one of the internal economies of scale enjoyed by the large companies. Now let's just have a discussion on the internal diseconomies of scale. So the large firms often suffer poor communication because they find it difficult to maintain effective flow of information between the departments, divisions, or between different head offices and subsidiaries. Time lag in the flow of communication can also create problems in terms of the speed of response to changing market conditions. So one of the diseconomies of internal economies of scale is the poor communication. The another one is the coordination problem. Coordination problem always affect large firms with many departments and divisions, and many find it much harder to cooperate its operation than a large firm or than a smaller firm. For example, a small manufacturer can easily coordinate the activities of its small number of staff than a large manufacturer employing ten thousands of employees. So this is why we say that the coordination problem and the poor communication are part of internal diseconomies. We also see the loss of management efficiency as the diseconomies of scale. That is because it occurs when the firm become large and operative in uncompetitive market. Such losses of inefficiency includes overpaying of resources, such as paying managers' salaries higher than the needed to secure their services and excessive waste of resources. The next diseconomies is the low motivation of employees in large firms, and it is a potential diseconomy of the scale that results in the lower productivity as measured by the output per worker. Large firms may experience inefficiencies related to the principal agent problem. This problem is caused because the size and complexity of the most large firms means that their owner often have to delegate the decision making to appointed managers, which can lead to the inefficiencies. For example, a store manager may employ the most unattractive sales manager rather than the most productive one. So, to sum up all the internal diseconomies of scale, so we have because of the poor communication, coordination problem, loss of the management inefficiencies, loss of the management efficiencies, low motivation of workers, and because of the principle. So, this is how we draw the and show our economies and diseconomies of scale. The economies and diseconomies of scale is seen in the average cost curve, that too in long run average cost curve only. That's why when we were discussing the long run, the different costs, and at that time when we saw the graph of the average cost curve in the long run, I told you all to hold on, we will understand what do we mean by the economies and diseconomies. So this is how we represent the economies of scale, because the average cost is down, the minimum. Until this point, we enjoy the economies of scale. And the moment the average cost in the long run increases, we say that we have entered into the diseconomies of scale, and it may be because of any of the internal or external factors. Right? Again, in this graph, the x-axis represents the output, whereas the y-axis represents the cost of the firm. So now let us just have a quick recap of what we have studied in this video lecture. So we have learned about the economies of scale. We have understood that what do we mean by economies of scale? That means that part where we enjoy the minimum cost. Then we understood that the economies are of two types, external and internal. And then we understood the different external economies of scale, different external diseconomies of scale, then different internal economies of scale, and different internal diseconomies of scale. So these were the few of the points: the external diseconomies, the internal economies because of the technical, your marketing, your managerial, your financial, your network, then internal diseconomies because of the poor communication, your internal coordination problem, your loss of management efficiency, maybe because of the low motivation of workers or because of the principal agent problem. Then we saw the graph in which we learned how to identify the economies of scale and diseconomies of scale. So now let us just have a quick recap on what we have learned on the basis of our MCQ test. So I have actually prepared 10 MCQ questions, and let's check how many of you get all 10 correct. So this is one of the best ways to check the learnings which we have done in this video lecture. So the first two questions are on your screen. Question number 3 and question number 4. Question number 5 and question number 6. Question number 7 and question number 8. Question number 9 and question number 10. So now let's just check the correct answers and evaluate how many of you have got 10 on 10. The correct answer for question number 1 is option C. Question number 2 is also option C. Question number 3, it's B. The correct option for question number 4 and question number 5 is option A. For question number 6, 7, and 8, the correct option is option C. And for question number 9 and 10, the correct options is option A. So I do hope that you all have scored 10 on 10 and easily understood what do we mean by the economies and diseconomies of scale in long run. And further, we have understood the internal and external economies and diseconomies respectively. So thank you for watching this video lecture. Happy learning.